Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, Bree.
We also have a special guest with us today. We're going to be sharing a testimony, and I've been really excited about this one. Roseanne is with us. She's one of my clients. Well, her son is one of my clients, and we've been working together for quite a while now, and specifically dealing with eczema. So, and some other things. I'm going to let her share the story, but we've been really looking forward to doing some of these testimonies. So thank you so much for being here, Roseanne.
Thanks for having
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for being here. And the purpose of this podcast episode is to encourage people that homeopathy works. It works beautifully for eczema. It can be slow. So I'm interested, Roseanne, in hearing, first of all, if you'll go all the way back, how old was he when he started showing signs of eczema? And just kind of tell us your story and what did you try before you found us? And then I'm sure we'll have some more questions that we'll ask.
Yeah. So my son first developed eczema when he was 5 months old, and I was told that it was a drool rash, which was believable for a short period of time, until it started getting worse and worse, and it was itchy. He was scratching. He was bleeding. So we did the normal topical solutions of trying different things that would work. We went all the way to allergy testing, like the pinprick testing, and then we did even steroids for a brief 3-day period, and I was very horrified that I had given into that, but it was really bad. He had it mainly on his cheeks is where we saw it. 90% of it was just on his cheeks. It was bleeding. It started off as like your typical red chapped cheeks, and then it progressively got worse and worse into the fact of it was just bleeding most of the time. He would scratch it primarily at night, and then he'd wake up covered in blood, just all over his sheets, all over his clothes, just his hands, under his fingernails, everywhere you could think of. It was pretty horrifying. But that's kind of at the point where I had tried the steroids, and then it got worse after that. And then I eventually heard about homeopathy, and I was like, all right, I've got to, give this a try.
So I'm looking for the pictures. Is it okay if I show before and after pictures?
Yeah, sure.
And remember, and we have his eyes blocked out, so for your privacy. But while I found them, I'm gonna airdrop them to my computer so I can show them on my screen. But while I'm doing that, I did have a question. How old? So you said this started when he was 5 months old.
Yes.
How old is he now?
He will be 2 in October.
Okay. And how old was he when you started homeopathy?
So he was a little over a year. We started, we're in September now. We started in January.
Okay. Gotcha. So, what you said you tried steroids.
Yeah,
What else?
it was a last resort. We had also done, I think you discussed in your baby eczema podcast about doing the elimination. And I had gone dairy free for about 8 weeks, and it was interesting listening to your podcast because I was like, it was awful. It's something that, like, one of the first things people say is cut dairy. And I did it for 12 weeks, but I didn't realize how much fat I was getting through the dairy. And so I was getting migraines, I was getting headaches, I was like dizzy, I was weak. Because I didn't talk about, if you're going to cut dairy, you have to also increase your fats in other ways. So it was a cut dairy, but no one really told you what else to do. And it didn't help. Nothing helped. We did allergy testing. Nothing came back. So I feel like I was running through all these things, and it was not only not getting better, even the steroid cream, we had done that as a last resort, and it cleared up in 3 days. And when it came back, the fissures on his face were layers and layers deep. Like, it was the most horrifying thing you could ever imagine. It was really awful. there would be many nights I'd wake up just literally in tears because it was horrible to see your child suffer through this, and you think you're trying everything you can ever imagine. You're getting input from family, you're getting input from friends, you're getting input from strangers, and you're like, okay, I'm trying this to a point where you're like, I don't think anything else is going to work.
Yep. I hear that a lot. So, the family members will say, why are you not taking him to the doctor? And so they kind of push you to do things. You did all that, it sounds like. And so I want to show the before. So this is right when you started working with Bree.
Yes.
Y'all
Yeah.
see that? And that's correct, right? So that's when you started working with her. Let's see. Man. Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine. That's, how awful that was for him and for you. And I believe that I would be waking up in tears also.
Yeah.
So then I'm gonna show the picture. Is this now, or does it look even better than that
Yeah,
now?
it's actually even better than that. This was, I think, maybe a month ago, so it's even more improved at this point.
Excellent. That's so exciting. Bree.
And just to be clear too, if you don't mind sharing this information, did he have any I'm sure I have this somewhere in my notes, but for you to be able to share, was he vaccinated at all with any reactions or any of the things that I think in mainstream we attribute to the development of eczema? But we get a lot of little ones that aren't. They don't have any of those things that still present with eczema.
Yeah, no, he didn't have any vaccinations, like no medical interventions at all, no antibiotics during delivery, nothing at all. It just appeared, 5 months in. None of my other kids had it, just nothing.
So that thank you for sharing that, because that's also part of my story, that my youngest two didn't have any vaccines, no antibiotics. They never had any allopathic medicine. They have never. And except, well, yeah, I was using some Tylenol and Motrin early on before I knew how good fevers are for you. So I was still trying to suppress fevers back then, but they both still ended up with food intolerances. And I used to like to blame that on vaccines. I did before. And so I'm also a lactation consultant. And, but now that I had my own experience, I also have learned this can be totally inherited. Our gut health is inherited. And even if the parents never had eczema or allergies or asthma, it's the gut health that can be inherited, passed on, and these things pop up. And if you're a mom or a dad listening to this right now, what I often hear is, what's the word? Regret or shame, or you feel bad. You feel bad. Like, I did this to my child. Please don't do that to yourself. We do the very best we can with the information that we have. Okay. So we just do the best we can. And that's all we can do. So we can't beat ourselves up. We can't carry that stuff. But that's likely what happens when we can't say there was a medicine or a vaccine or whatever that caused it. And so, did you try any supplements or other creams? Any that were natural things?
Um, I had tried a few. There was some Manuka honey with olive oil, some type of cream with that. I did I did a bunch of different natural eczema cream or other lotions. That again, it would keep it moist, but it didn't heal it. Except that Manuka honey was a big factor in helping the healing process. So when he'd get really itchy, he'd start scratching, and when I would slather his cheeks with that, he would get out of that cycle of scratching because he didn't want to scratch because he'd get the goop all over it. So that was a big that was a thing that we kind of figured out that was helpful along with the remedies that we used.
That was something that we had noticed, I think, and I have since we figured that out with your son. I've seen it in other cases where as the skin is healing, anything, if you have a scab and it's healing, it's typically itchy. So when we realized that, the eczema seemed to be really, really improving, and that scratching was really the only, it seemed like the only thing hindering the movement forward. And we did pair that with a remedy for itching, healing, and then the Manuka honey. And that helped a lot. So I've been able to use that actually with other clients too. Now that we've kind of, it's not across the board, but when that itching is a part of the healing, that was very cool to see the improvement after that. After that, after you started that.
Yeah, I
I
feel
did
like
want to, you
oh,
go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I feel like we were stuck in this cycle a couple months in where I was saying we are healing. We would get stuck in this cycle of his skin would heal and then he would scratch at night, tear the whole thing open, and it'd be 10 days to 2 weeks to get back to that healing point. We were stuck in this cycle over and over until we figured out the Manuka honey was a big part. And then I got him scratch sleeves at night because I noticed that he was mainly scratching, which of course he sucks his thumb. So I even cut a hole and sewed a hole so he'd have his thumb to suck, but at least most of his hands, were covered. So I think it's that finding that combination of things that the remedies worked, but you also got to sometimes figure out what specific to your child you need to do to get out of that cycle so you can actually heal the whole way.
Yeah. I did want to ask it. Don't know if you were getting there, Melissa, but if you could walk everyone through just what you remember off the top of your head, what your process looked like. So did it get better right away, or do you remember there being a cycle where you saw improvement and then you saw a couple of setbacks and then improvement and a setback? And like you just mentioned, the scratching. So if you don't mind kind of walking us through what that could look like for other people.
Yeah, so I think it's been about 8 months. So, which sounds like a really long time, and I think it took 2 months in to really start seeing improvements. They were really slow at first, but when you see your child in so much pain, and whether it's on your cheeks, on the other parts, I mean, there's really horrible eczema. You can have it anywhere on your body, but when you're seeing any improvement after you've tried, most people have tried a lot of things probably before they come to you. But when you see that hope of some improvement, so 2 months in, I started seeing some improvement. And I think I noticed it small bits at first, and it started getting better. And then it moved a little bit from his cheeks. There was some between behind his knee. And then he also had a crack behind one of his ears that got really bad for one point, but the other part started healing. And then as I was saying, we got stuck in this cycle of it was healing. I would say like 80% healed, then he would tear it open, we'd go back. So that was a cycle that was probably like 2 months long, just of trying to figure out. And then once we figured out, okay, he's just scratching at night, we kept up doing that. And then I think a couple months in, you changed up one of the remedies, we switched up something else. And that seemed to be the thing to get him over the edge. The other thing that I noticed was him is that sweating, tears, and water would make him scratch more. So we had a period of 6 weeks where the only time we're outside is if we were at the pool in the water, which didn't seem to irritate him. But we stayed inside. It wasn't, we stayed out of the humidity, and that seemed to help him get that last bit of where we are. So I feel like it was a really long process. But when you see that improvement and you see that there is hope, it is getting better. I'm not using steroids. I'm not using all these crazy things that you can't even pronounce. You're willing to do whatever it is to get there. So it was really encouraging for me to see that you can use natural remedies to heal something. You don't have to change your entire diet, which granted, kids obviously have allergies, but for us, it was just totally shocking and amazing. I remember texting or emailing Brie at one point being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is actually like, it really is working.
It really is so exciting. I get just as excited even when I believe it works. Obviously, that's why we do this. But when I see it, and I will say your story was actually a quicker one than a lot of people. And there are varying factors that go into that, but I know it does not always happen that quickly. And Melissa, you've done it for so much longer than me, practiced homeopathy. So I'm sure you've seen it take 2 years before this really moves on and out. Um, and I love that you, it was encouraging, but you also shared the reality of, I mean, you and I communicated a lot at some of the points where there what seemed to be setbacks in the movement of the eczema, like the deep cracks that showed up. Um, I do tell people that can happen because it can shift. And as a parent, it is easy to look at that and be really discouraged and think that it's you've just gone 5 steps backwards, or now it's somewhere different. It must be getting worse. So you really hung in there. I have to really credit you for that. Like, it's not easy to trust somebody else saying it's okay, it's part of the process, this is good, movement is okay. So a big part of his healing, I really believe, is you stuck with the process when there had to have been points that you were a little bit questioning. Maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you agree with that?
Yeah, there were definitely points that I was like, I feel like we're stuck. Like we're just doing the same things. And granted, the scratching and stuff would aggravate it. But yeah, there were definitely points that I was like, this is taking a really long time, really stuck. But I felt like I was like, this is what we're doing. Like, if I'm going to stick with something, I'm not going to go try doing this, try doing that. People would give input of, why don't you do this? Why don't you try this? I was like, no, I just want to pick one thing. I want to stick it all the way out to the end. And now, like, his cheeks are like, we're at 98%. There's just a little bit like lingering, but it is just like, I look at him twice now because I'm like, wow, like, I've only ever known you with red cheeks, bloody cheek, like that's what we've known since he's been 5 months old. So like to come out on the other side, it's like if it took a year, like whatever it was, we were gonna stick with it because we knew that, eventually we would get there.
Thank you for sharing that. That's what that's exactly what I wanted to go to next was what made you stick with it? And you kind of said that already. So now I want to know, is that your personality? Are you a very patient person naturally? And when are you determined naturally? Do you stick with things long term when you decide to? Is that just really who you are?
Yeah, I when I get my eyes focused on something, I'm going to stick with it. I also have heard testimonies from other clients of yours that said this has worked. Granted, their processes were different, their issues were different, but I'm very much of I'm going to try something, and I want to try something that's not going to cause more pain down the road, a temporary fix. Like when I'm into something to heal, like I want to heal it from the inside out for the long term. And again, all my research and just hearing testimonies from other people of like this is what we're doing. Like I knew from the beginning it was going to be long, it's going to be hard trying to get him to figure out how do I get these pellets in his mouth, how do I get him to take this thing to the point that he would know where it was and he would point to me to, hey, let's get this, it's time to have it. We had this routine, and we'd put the honey on his cheeks, and it became part of him. The scratch sleeves, which he hated at first. You just turn it into this is what we do. This is how it is. Everybody knows we're all on board. The family, oh, did you give him his medicine yet? His brothers would ask. So it became a habit, lifestyle change in the fact that everyone was on board and getting him healed.
Consistency. That, isn't that a key to parenting? And I'll be the first to admit I have not been the most consistent. My children are older and I can see the fruit from that now. So I love your consistency and your just that your whole family was on board. And I think that just the fact that you have that personality of you go into it with determination and you're going to stick with it. That's huge and that really helps. But so maybe somebody is listening or watching, which I did want to just throw in there really quick. If you're listening to this, you can see the pictures that I shared on my screen on the YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel has you can watch us and see us here. So what I want to encourage people with who are not naturally patient and consistent is that that really is important. And skin healing with homeopathy, I think really probably anything in homeopathy, but skin can take the longest. And so you need to go into it. If you're going to use homeopathy, you need to go into it knowing I'm here for the long haul. You need to make up your mind and stick with the remedies and do it, do them on schedule. So I'm so thankful that you did that. And I'm thankful for all of my clients that do that. I have a lot of clients that really stick with it. They stick to the schedule and they do it well. And that is what helps them to be successful, because I can't do it for you. I can tell you what I think you need, and then it's up to you to take it and do it. Bree, did you have something else to say about that?
I did, and then I lost it, but I did want to also say that something that was cool is in homeopathy, the process of healing does look different than what we are used to seeing in allopathic medicine. And that was something I was really encouraged by you, Roseanne, was like you didn't, even if there were times of being skeptical or questioning or doubting the process, you stuck with it anyway and trusted that it was still working. And that is a unique thing about homeopathy. It is stimulating that person's body to heal and push pathology out. So that will look very different for different people, and that moves and it changes. And sometimes pushing it out can look like a worsening or a movement that in allopathic medicine would not be okay. That would be a bad thing, but it is a good thing. So skin, especially, the body pushes it all out to the skin. So I just love too that now his skin is so much better, but that is because his gut and the inside of his body and his immune system is so much better. I know what I was going to ask you. Okay. Now, you had just said when we started that you guys are at the beach.
Yeah, we're on a beach trip.
Okay. So how is his skin here this time? That used to bother him, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun being out and him not going to be scratching and being in the sun and not having to worry about having his face covered, 24/7. Yeah, it's just amazing.
That's awesome.
I love that. I just did a follow-up today where the kids, at least one of them, but I think two of them, their eczema is much worse at the beach. And they also just went on a beach trip, but today was their first follow-up. So we don't quite know yet. We don't know how long, how that can take. If you remember, Roseanne, I think this is my last question. If you remember, how many remedies were you using at one time, if you remember?
I think at one point it was up to 4 remedies. It was generally 3, kind of 4 or 5 at the most, but some of them were depending on, was he scratching, was his skin wide open. It was very specific, set to what he was going through. And that's what I really appreciated, Brie, that she clarified, here's what you're using, here's why you're using them, here's when to use them, if you need to modify when to use them based on how he's presenting. Yeah, it was just very easy to follow, straightforward, and I like a plan. So if you give me a plan, I can stick to it. If it's like day to day, we're going to change, it's a little bit harder, but it was very clear. And I appreciated that, because I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to stick through it all the way to the end, which is basically, where we're at now.
Awesome. And I do have another question. Why did you choose us? How did you find us, or why did you choose us to work with?
Some testimonials in a Crunchy Moms group. I had a friend who also had a child with eczema who I think had seen either you or Bree. But I have been doing research in homeopathy, and then I had just heard about you guys, and I was like, this is what we're doing. So I am very glad.
Yay, me too. Bree, do you have any more questions for her?
I don't have any more questions, but do want to say it's been a joy really to work with you and your son. And I know we're still finishing up a little bit, but I think I love, you've said this before, Melissa, you love when you're able to get to a point with a client where that's it and you check in when you need help. But otherwise, that is the goal. We're not here to keep you around forever. So thank you so much for sharing. I know it can be intimidating, but you've done it very well, very confidently, and we appreciate you coming And hopefully we'll get some more of these now that people have seen somebody do it and not be so scary. So thank you so much. Thanks for being so great to work with and such an encouragement.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, and happy to share and encourage other moms, especially who are, wanting something to work with their child. I know it's overwhelming, and just happy to have found something that works. And definitely good to know you for future issues or things that we need you for. But it's been a pleasure working with you.
Yeah, so I have had several lots, I would even say lots of pictures like that before and after, and testimonies with eczema. And I always ask people to come on the podcast and share so that they can encourage others, but not many people either want to or have time or whatever. So I'm very thankful that you chose to do this. And also, when you find a good, this is for everybody listening or watching, when you find a homeopath that you love, you really should stick with that person long term. And so that doesn't mean, that you'll, Roseanne, that you'll be following up every 8 weeks or 12 weeks. It's when the eczema is clear and you feel good, and just like Bree said, you check in when you need something. Something else will come up later, whatever it is. It might just be whatever. Puberty is going to come. There's going to be hormones that are going to change. I know that seems far off, but man, it flies. As life changes, as we grow, and as things change in our body, things come up. And so you guys, when you find a homeopath that you love, stick with them. Just keep going. Go back, whether, even if it's 5 years later, and say, hey, now we have this thing. It really should be a lifelong relationship if you're a good fit and you like each other, and it works. So thank you again for being here, Roseanne. And you guys I did one last thing I wanted to say. We purposely didn't share specific remedies here today because case management, especially in eczema, is not easy. I think that's just the best I can say. And the remedies can be individual. We do have a couple that we usually start people off with if it looks a certain way. But even if I didn't want you just to listen to her story and go and grab these remedies and try it for 8 weeks and then say, oh, it didn't work, and then abandon homeopathy. It's so much deeper than that. And I want you to come work with us. If you or your child has eczema, come work with us. Let us help you through the process so you can uproot this thing forever. Bree, you have any last words?
No.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you guys next time.